This week on Real Talk with Denver7 and CPR News. Valentine's Day in the modern era.
The dating scene has dramatically shifted over the years, and there are new approaches people are taking to relationships.
Not everybody is partnering up anymore. There are many ways to live a rich, remarkable life.
Plus, never too old to find love. How some groups are rediscovering romance later in life, and a look at the struggles that go along with it.
Welcome to Real Talk with Denver7 and CPR News. I'm Colorado Public Radio's Nathan Heffel.
And I'm Denver7's Micah Smith. Each week in a partnership between Denver7 and CPR, we'll have a real talk about issues impacting underrepresented people across Colorado.
With Valentine's Day nearly here, we're talking about modern day dating and how shifting cultural norms are changing what it means to fall in love.
The dating landscape in America has really evolved over the last few decades. This evolution partially stems from political movements like the push for LGBTQ plus rights or the feminist movement. And we can't forget about all of the huge advances in communication.
It's so true. For example, gone are the days of waiting by your landline phone, hoping your love interest calls. Today, dating apps have almost gamified the process of finding love. All it takes is a couple of swipes, left or right, exchange a few text messages, and boom, you got yourself a date.
However, it's also just as easy for potential partners to pretend to be something that they're not, or to ghost a match altogether. That's why some singles looking for a serious commitment have found themselves suffering from dating app burnout.
That's where the centuries-old profession of matchmaking comes in. Well, they've been around for a long time. Modern-day matchmakers are evolving to fit the needs of today's singles.
And we have one of them with us, Abby Rosenblum, who recently merged her company with another company to create Simply Matchmaking, where she is Denver's head matchmaker. Abby, thanks so much for being with us today.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk all things love and dating.
Yes.
We could go on and on.
And we have a lot of questions. So we're seeing a revival of matchmaking services. What does this say about the dating landscape in general?
You know, I think that dating apps have actually gotten more difficult and have kind of gotten worse in the past 5 years. And again, this is just my opinion, but I would bet there are a lot of daters out there who might agree. And, you know, I have found that since the pandemic, people have been really wanting a more meaningful connection, and sometimes it's hard to find that online. So matchmakers have actually, all of us have seen a huge surge of people reaching out since the pandemic.
You say all of us. It's like, I really didn't think it was still a thing to have matchmaking going on with someone reaching out and saying, hey, can you help me find someone to fall in love with?
I know, it's kind of funny that, you know, not everyone thinks of matchmaking. There, you know, when you want to date, you're like, okay, fire up the dating apps. That's the first thing you think of. But more and more people are reaching out to matchmakers before they do that, or they go through the dating apps, they get burnt out, and then they reach out to us. Either way is fine, because there's so many ways to meet people. You know, matchmaking isn't for everybody, because it's definitely, you know, trusting someone else with your love life is a big commitment.
Absolutely. Who are your clients? And I have to make an observation for our listeners. Abby's looks very young and vibrant, so I want to know
thank you.
who your clients are, age range, gender, occupation. Are you seeing younger people opt for this?
Yeah, I mean, we serve everyone from 21 years old to 90 years old. So I have seen everyone in that age range. Wow. You know, people from all kinds of different backgrounds and with different jobs. You know, there really are no limitations. But some things that I noticed that everyone has in common is everyone's super busy. They, you know, probably have either a high-powered job, or maybe they got to wake up really early like you guys do, and they just don't have the time to date. And then usually they're kind of burnt out on whatever they were doing for dating before.
In terms of who else you're seeing in gender identity, the nickname for Denver is Menver. I don't know if y'all have heard that before.
I have not heard
because
that.
apparently there are
yeah.
much more single men than single ladies. Does that reflect in your clientele?
So I remember looking at some US Census data, and you guys can fact check me on this one as the journalist, that showed there were more men than women in the Denver metro area. And I do think because we have like a very, you know, outdoorsy and adventurous draw, that we do get a lot of men who might want to be doing that kind of thing. But of course, women and everyone else loves doing that here too. But I do think it has kind of confused people where they're like, oh, I'm gonna get here to Denver and it's Menver, and I'm gonna be in a paradise of men. And then you have to sift through and find the people who actually want a relationship, if that's what you're looking for.
So we know that you said matchmaking is good for anyone, any age, but let's focus a little bit on the younger people, maybe the Gen Z, who are like, I just even want to try this. Do you work with them, and what are some of the unique challenges you find with them?
Yeah, Gen Z people have just started reaching out, honestly, because we do get some people that are like 21, 22, 23, but not a ton. And usually that's more where the coaching comes in, where we're like, here's how you go on a date, here's how you have a conversation. And sometimes we got to start from there with the like very young, usually guys, but women as well. And with Gen Z, I actually notice a lot that people are much more fluid in their sexuality, or at least have discovered that maybe more, or more open to sharing it, where I end up with clients who are, bisexual or pansexual, or like, I just want to meet someone who's cool. It doesn't matter what gender or what sex they identify as.
I know there's been a little bit of a pushback when it comes to dating apps. We just mentioned the burnout, but you do help clients with their online presence as well, right?
Yes. Yeah. We really think that you should use every resource at your fingertips. In no way are we in competition or anti-dating app. It's just about the right way of using it. And kind of like you guys had mentioned in the intro of the dating burnout, I really try to help people avoid that. Because if you use the dating apps correctly, and then you don't get burnt out, you can actually meet someone awesome. Like I met my husband on a dating app before I started matchmaking.
You matched yourself.
But there's that fear of the algorithm, that you're going to be creating a profile in your persona to this algorithm that, a huge multinational corporation has produced for you.
Right, and what you have to remember too is, the dating apps are there to make money, which, obviously there is some good in there. They want to connect you, they want you to find someone, but in the end, like, they got to make some money. So, you have to remember that in the back of your mind when you are swiping and realizing, whoa, I'm getting a little dopamine hit every time I get that match or that swipe, and then I want to just keep going, just like in Candy Crush or whatever other game you're playing.
What advice do you have for those seeking love?
Oh, so the biggest thing is, if you're looking for a serious, committed, monogamous relationship, you only need to find one person. I think we all get so bogged down in like, okay, there's millions and billions of people on the dating apps, and I need to go on a date every week or a date every night. And that will get you burnt out in like less than 2 seconds. So focus on, you need to find one person who's a good fit. So if you go on a date here and there, eventually one of them is going to click.
Abby, thank you so much for joining us for this Real Talk. I really enjoyed this.
Thanks for having me.
All right, and if you want to learn more or thinking about getting started with a matchmaker, you can go to simplymatchmaking.com for more information.
We're just getting started with this Real Talk about modern day dating. Coming up, flying solo and loving it.
Why more people are choosing to embrace the single life and the benefits they're finding to go with it. Welcome back to Real Talk with Denver7 and CPR News. I'm Denver7's Micah Smith.
And I'm Colorado Public Radio's Nathan Heffel. With Valentine's Day fast approaching, we're having a real talk about how modern day dating has evolved.
Now, if you're spending Valentine's Day single, you may feel like you're the only one not partnered up, but that couldn't be further from the truth.
In fact, more and more people are choosing to break the mold and live their lives solo. Today, 48% of adults in the U.S. are unmarried, compared to nearly 22% in 1960.
Plus, the number of one-person households globally has doubled in the last 50 years. So, behavioral scientist and CU professor Peter McGraw took a deeper dive into this lifestyle change in his new book, Solo: Building a Remarkable Life of Your Own.
And I spoke with him all about it. Peter, thanks so much for joining us. I found this book, Solo, to be fascinating. First off, for listeners or watchers, what is this book about? Give us kind of the elevator pitch about what this book is about.
In short, this book is about celebrating single living, looking at the opportunities that come from being unpartnered, whether it be for now or forever.
Yeah, and I think, we're nearing Valentine's Day. People are thinking about, I have to find somewhere, I have to find a date, I have to find all these things. You're saying there is simplicity and happiness in being single, and that there is no reason to feel less than or othered because of that. Can you go a little bit deeper into that?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, one of the things that has changed a lot is that not everybody is partnering up anymore. So in 1960, 90% of American adults would become married at age 21.
Yeah.
That number is much lower now. So 50% of the US adult population is single, and 50% of them are not interested in dating or a relationship at the moment. And I don't want those people to feel like their lives are lacking in any way, that there are many ways to live a rich, remarkable life.
Now, is this a cultural shift that this has happened? Because it seems to me the undercurrent is that's not a good thing, to not be partnered, right? You have to have a spouse, you have to have kids, procreation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But you're saying that in essence, single people have increased over time, but yet the culture hasn't changed.
Hasn't caught up.
Yeah,
yes.
What is that?
Well, part of the reason is that it's happening for a lot of reasons. If it was happening for just one single reason, I think that the world would be more responsive. Yeah. Some of it's just demographic shifts. We have just a lot more older people, and you have people who are not remarrying at the same rate. So less than 50% of divorces result in someone remarrying.
Oh, I see.
One of the biggest reasons, and I think the most important reason, has been the rise of women in general. It just happens to be if you give women economic and educational opportunities, some of them decide, I don't need a man. And then there's this other one, which I think is very interesting, and it happening in places like Denver in particular, is I like to say that singles beget singles. That is that when I was young, when you were young, we probably knew almost no one who was in the middle of their life and single.
Right.
And happy. And now there are lots of them. And so now you look around, you go, oh, there's this other path that might work well for me, as I like to say, for now, or maybe even forever.
You mentioned something called the Big Tent. I've read about it. You also have a podcast. I listened to that part, and we talked about the Big Tent. What do you mean about that?
Well, okay, so the idea essentially is that, singles have different goals, right? So there are those singles who desperately want to find someone, and they either are having trouble finding someone suitable, or even more sadly, no one finds them suitable, and they're struggling. Then there's other single, I call them the someday singles. Someday I'll find my person. The just may singles are like, it'd be nice to find someone, but I'm not waiting around. I'm not going to put off my trip to Paris to see the Eiffel Tower because my person may never come.
Right.
I've already mentioned the no ways, 50%, not even looking at the moment.
Yeah.
And then there's the spicy new ways. These are folks who are pursuing sex and or romance, but doing it in a unconventional way.
So someone who is watching or listening and saying, yeah, I'm one of those paths. Any advice, any thoughts, kind of bring them into this conversation?
Well, I think the first place to start is to know that it's completely normal to be in that situation.
But my mom keeps calling me and
I
saying
know.
this, or my friends keep saying this, right? That's not easy to hear all the time. My best friends are going out and I feel awkward coming into the bar just by myself.
Yes. I have a character in the book, I call her Aunt Sally, who talks to Thelma, who's a proud single, right? Solo, as I would say. And she has this amazing things going on in her life. She just hiked Machu Picchu. She just got a rescue puppy named Levi. She just closed on a condo and got a big promotion. And Aunt Sally says, oh, that's sweet, dear, but is there anyone special? And I think that can resonate with a lot of people. And I think, there's lots of ways to respond to this. One is to assure the people in your life who are concerned about you that you're doing just fine and that you're pursuing a good life for you now. But then I think also it's important then to find other people like you, to find your community.
Right.
And people who are sort of like-minded, who are looking beyond this very narrow way to measure a good life.
And from a personal point for you, you are a solo, yes? And how has that influenced, your decision to write these books, to write books like this, to talk to other people who are solo?
Yes. My evolution, I like to say solos have three elements. They're wholehearted. They see themselves as a complete person. They have a sense of self-reliance and autonomy. That is, they're not looking for someone else to solve their problems. And they tend to be an unconventional thinker, just by virtue of allowing yourself to consider life without a partner or a different style of partner.
To be outside that quote-unquote norm.
That's right.
Yeah.
We call it the relationship escalator.
Oh, interesting.
Yes.
Yeah.
That happened to me, the autonomy started young as a latchkey kid. The wholeheartedness happened in my late 30s, grieving a breakup. And then the unconventional thinking happened in my 50s. And once I kind of had that complete change over from single to solo, I really just decided I wanted to create a resource that I had when I was half my age, when I was in my mid-20s, feeling like there was just something wrong with me and just struggling because I just couldn't make the standard work.
And final thought before I wrap up here, speak to that person that may be listening or watching who is in the same shoes as you. What do you want to say to that person?
Wow. I've never thought about it quite like that. Well, I think the thing that I would say to that person, especially kind of a mini me, would be, it's going to be okay, but what you can't do is give up, right? You can't just say, just because I don't fit in, I can't either force myself to fit in or give up pursuing what makes my life remarkable. And so look for opportunities for personal and professional growth, find your people, your community, and see the opportunities.
Peter, thanks so much for being here today.
Yeah, it was a pleasure.
CU professor and author Peter McGraw. His book, Solo, Building a Remarkable Life of Your Own, is out now. He'll present his book at the Tattered Cover on East Colfax in Denver Thursday, February 15th at 6 p.m.
Still ahead on this episode of Real Talk, getting back into the dating pool can be daunting for senior singles, and even more so in the LGBTQ+ community.
A look at the struggles they face while looking for love and how a local organization is working to help them overcome it and rediscover romantic connections. It's Real Talk with Denver7 and CPR News. Welcome back to Real Talk with Denver7 and CPR News. I'm Colorado Public Radio's Nathan Heffel.
And I'm Denver7's Micah Smith. Today we're having a real talk about Valentine's Day and the ever-changing dating landscape.
We've talked about how dating in today's day and age can be hard. It can be even more difficult when you're re-entering the dating world at an older age.
Growing older can often lead to feelings of isolation, and older adults within the LGBTQ+ community can encounter even more obstacles when it comes to looking for safe and inclusive services to help them form romantic connections.
The Center on Colfax in Denver is working to help these singles overcome those obstacles with its West of 50 program.
So here to tell us more about that is Jason Eaton Lynch, the Director of Elder Services at the Center on Colfax. Jason, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
So what are some of the struggles for those looking for love over 50, especially in the LGBTQ+ community?
Yeah, it's difficult to find love at any age.
Right.
But I most definitely find that our community members really struggle with understanding how it's changed, especially if they've recently lost a partner or have decided to start dating again or really starting to engage intimacy. Coming to terms or understanding how the world has changed, whether that's new medications that are available to them and how to access those medications, how to protect themselves from online predators and recognizing when those things start to arise, should they choose to be on an online dating app, or if they're still going to a bar, the reduction in gay spaces or queer spaces because there's more, it's more accepted to be gay in the community, so those areas are getting smaller, and so trying to find a space that fits you, but then when you walk into those environments and you don't see yourself anymore, that also makes it extremely uncomfortable. And yesterday in one of our groups, we were just talking about how things are starting to droop and sag, and that picture that you had from 1986, and you were so proud of yourself, and you're like, oh, that's not there anymore. And having to work through that.
Well, and you're talking about, the medications available, PrEP and things like that, and how that's a changing world. Back in the 70s and 80s, that wasn't part of the culture, right? And how people in our community are saying, we can have a very safe sex life while dating. How does that impact older LGBTQ people who are like, I'm just getting into this and I don't know what I don't know?
Right. So we're working with a community that didn't have sex education at all. And granted, they've lived their whole life active in many ways, but learning about new languages, the changing in terminology, and understanding that they need to be able to communicate with their healthcare providers and let them know what they're interested in or what they're wanting to do or needing to do to be healthy and happy individuals and be their best full self, and to be transparent with that provider. And their providers need to be competent in the community and what their community needs are, and our community needs to learn how to advocate for themselves and be honest with their providers as well, and so they can get that information.
Yeah. We can't have this conversation without talking about dating apps. That continues to come up on this episode of Real Talk, but those might seem foreign for somebody over the age of 50. When we talk about Grindr and Scruff and Tinder, that might be very daunting for somebody over the age of 50.
Yes, most definitely. We have some great programming, and one of our programs, we really break down and we had some constructive conversation about dating apps and the risks associated with them, but then also how they can be very beneficial in helping you find someone within your own age category, if that's within your own age category. And going back to those risks and stuff, we even engage our community members, and if they are interested in creating a profile, making sure that it's a profile that represents themselves and
Authenticity, being authentic, right?
Yeah. And demonstrating who they truly are and what they're wanting to bring to the table. And we will most definitely have an honest conversation. But then on the flip side, when they start to talk to us about the individuals that they're meeting, and if the relationships are turning into long-term relationships, then we start to listen to red flags that could potentially be of risk to our community members. And we start to say, hey, this is what I'm hearing. And let's maybe take a breath. And if I was saying this to you, what would you recommend for me? And so then they can kind of take a few minutes and just kind of think and see if they need to make some changes in their choices.
Really briefly, is there a story that you've heard from someone in your group, or maybe someone who's been there a very, very long time, to kind of lift up and say, yeah, this is a safe place if someone is watching or listening, to go and say, yeah, I'm older than 50 and I want to have some people that I connect with?
Oh yeah, well, our West of 50 program at the center really prizes itself on creating community and valuing different ideas and who they are. And it is a brave space. We can never guarantee that someone's feelings are never going to be hurt or such, but it is most definitely a welcoming space. And coming out at any age is never easy, and just kind of being open to those conversations and valuing them.
Jason, thank you so much. This is so great to have you here.
Yeah.
Jason Eaton Lynch with the Center on Colfax. So appreciate you being here.
Great, thanks.
And that's this week's episode of Real Talk with Denver7 and CPR News. Every week we'll have a real talk on issues that impact Coloradans who are often overlooked.
You can find all of our shows on denver7.com/realtalk or at cpr.org/realtalk. Have a great day.